pretty much all artwork invites you to take another look, but today we put together a panel of people who their art really does invite you to take another look and see the story behind it. Some of the stories might be a little bit more obvious, and some you really have to drill down, but you're not going to be bored at this panel, I can promise you that. So thank you all for being here. We are grateful to have such great community support, and my name is Susan Poget, along with my husband and our awesome team. We put this wonderful event together for you to enjoy and share with your friends. But today we have a wonderful panel. I'll tell them about you later. Well, I'll introduce you. So just to my right is Priscilla Nelson. She is a local, currently living in Scottsdale. Yay! Next to her we have Tim Weldon from San Francisco, California. Promise to make you smile when you look at his work. And then beyond there we have Pete Tillak from San Diego, California. And Mr. Santiago Michalek from Salt Lake City, Utah. Okay, so we're going to start with ladies first. And really what we like to do is start by having you tell a little bit about your background and why you got into art. And she tripped over a rock on Monday and broke her ankle and had lacerations on her knee, but she's here.
Yeah. And I have the little rock. It's going to be bronzed by one of these other artists.
And you should see the rock collection in her studio that Mr. Tillak is responsible for. All the rocks apologize to him.
He had a bunch of rocks with little hands and signs, and they said, "I'm sorry, it wasn't meant for you. It was meant for this other artist." And my favorite rock says, "Dwayne did it." And I come up to him and I'm like, "Who's Dwayne?" Because I'm thinking artist, right? And he goes, "Dwayne The Rock Johnson."
I said, if you're going to injure yourself, this is the place to do it, because everyone's going to make you feel good. So you have good company right up front here. So. All right, back to you.
All right, name's Priscilla Nelson. I've been painting for 43 years, and I count that as the first time I sold one painting, I was 14, so yes, do the math. I was in college, biology major, pre-med, was going to be a neurosurgeon. And right before medical school, my father, Mr. New York executive, popped me out of medical school. And his words to me were, "You only live once. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is your one and only chance to be an artist." And I haven't stopped since then. And every day that I paint, I think about him.
Hi, I'm Tim Weldon. I'm from San Francisco. Actually, not originally. Grew up in New York, Brooklyn, New York, and wound up after my first year of high school moving to a small town in New Mexico, which at the time I couldn't handle it. It wasn't anything that I wanted to be part of. I graduated high school, went back to New York. I danced for a living, blew out my knees. Wound up back in New Mexico trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life after everything I worked for. And I came to visit a friend of mine out in San Francisco, and I got in the music business by just being in the right place at the right time, working for a gentleman named Bob Skaggs. Some of you might remember. I became a sound engineer. I traveled with he and a number of other bands around the world for about 13 years, and I decided I wanted to get off the road and stay put, start a family. I bought into my younger brother's band's recording studio. First mistake, never use your own money. I invested everything I made for the last 13 years into this recording studio, and in 3 years I was completely bankrupt. And I started painting for the therapy of what am I going to do with my life now. That was 1998. I mean, I drew as a little kid and did cartoons, always thought I worked for Mad Magazine, but this thing took hold of me. I saw a painting by a guy named Bill Traylor, who was like 85 when he started painting with temper and pencil, and I was blown away. This childish image resonated with me like nothing. It was like a big thunderbolt. It hit me that hard, and I haven't stopped painting a day since.
I knew about the music, but not about the dancing.
Yeah.
Wow. We might have to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Let's have a sample.
He blew out his knees.
Rappy can just spin on his back in the middle. We can all just throw money at him. There you go. Name's Pete Tilak. Grew up in Australia, was an electrician. Studied to own my business and thought it'd be big business, and next thing I know I ended up traveling and never came home. Surfed all around the world for about 10 years, and along the way would just do anything I could to pay the way, from tree planting all through Alaska and Canada. I'm sorry, I thought I had a strong voice without this. I'm sorry. I thought I was yelling at my daughter. So I ended up traveling and getting to see the world and surfing everything I ever could. And then finally along the way ended up getting a job building trade show booths. From there, they happened to do murals on the weekend and said, hey, we need a hand. I'm like, yeah, I used to do a little bit of art at school, went and messed around with them, and they actually told me I was shit. So they actually called me the mud guy. I had no idea what I was doing, but I had the passion. And so what they gave me was the foresight to say, do I know anything about shadows, highlights, and tones? And from there, I just worked at it and decided to be an artist, which was a big gamble as it was, but I had nothing to lose, really, because my life had been that way. Painted my butt off, got a little bit of finances, but a lot of failures, and that's what most of our jobs as artists are. We put our stuff on the line, and it's an emotional thing. It really is for most artists, because it really comes out of us in so many different ways. And I wasn't making it, and it was actually at this show. Oh, look at that smile! You know the story. It was at this show where I hit a brick wall and couldn't sell a damn thing, and ended up finding my true voice, which is what we have behind us. So I'm sure I'm going to get a little bit more into that. But thank everybody for coming today.
My name is Santiago Michalak. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. I have been painting my whole life. My parents say I was painting and drawing before I was walking, so I don't ever remember not doing it. It's just kind of what I always thought I would do and what I always wanted to do. I studied at a place called the Springville Art Museum and the Met in New York, and any other museum or gallery that had amazing art. The masters were what I would soak in and observe and study, and then try to emulate in my studio with every brushstroke and every composition, and as I would mix color. I had a huge kind of evolution in my work about 10 years ago, which is part of what you see is artwork right in front of you. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go on, but here I am. I've been here about 9 years, same as Pete, and I love it. It's what I do every day, and I can't imagine doing anything else.
You did have another kind of hobby / business before you did this, and I'm just going to give a little backstory, and I think it should be our launching point for art stories. Was it the first year or the second year? Anyway, it was your first year. You had an amazing painting that was a self-portrait, but it was a self-portrait story. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so I came here and I kind of wanted to put everything on the line. I feel like there's a clientele that comes here that loves art, that really appreciates it. They're not, we all work hard to earn our living and to create a lifestyle. And closer. And
Some of us don't hear well.
the microphone, Peter. And so it's not fake dollars I get paid with. It's real hard-earned money from people who love art. And so I knew I had to create something that was the best of me. I wanted to put everything I had out there. And I did this painting of me with my Volkswagens, which is part of my evolution and story. I had a hobby. I've always painted, like I mentioned. And then I started a hobby which turned into a business, and I got really good at it, which was restoring Volkswagens. I did 1, and then I did 2, and then I did 10, and then I did 60. And I worked with some friends, and we would sell them at auction. We were really good at it, okay? And I came to a crossroads because I realized, well, I'm either a car restorer guy or I'm a painter guy, and I wasn't sure what I should go. I knew that, the artist road traditionally can be kind of tough, and so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And the painting is me sitting with my Volkswagens, making that decision. And obviously this is what I chose. And by the act of me painting this piece, similar to painting this one right here, except I was a part of it, I was ultimately making that decision to put 2 feet in and to give everything I had to this, because it was my first love. But also it became a piece about the fact that through this journey, I used to do figurative work, portraits, nudes, multi-figurative pieces. I love that stuff. I'll always paint it. But in the transition, I started painting my Volkswagens that I became intimately familiar with. And so that's where my professional career began. And I don't know how deep we want to get into this right now, but when I was painting in my studio before, people would come into my studio and they'd see a portrait or a nude and they would say things like, "Oh, this brushwork is just great, and I love the color, and the composition is stunning, and great model," or things like that. It was very technical, and as an artist, I was like, "Wow, thank you." It was very complimentary and exactly what you would want to hear. But then I painted one of these, and people would come into my studio, and the response was completely different. They would shift their weight, and then they would say, "Oh my gosh," and they would start to laugh, and they would tell stories. They'd be like, "When we were kids, we did, or when we were just married, when I was in high school and I was dead broke," and they would start telling me all these intimate stories that I didn't know a lot of these people, and so all of a sudden there was this instant connection through the artwork that was completely unexpected. Obviously I painted it, so the brushwork is similar, and the compositions are ones that I created, but the emotional response was a humongous shift. And that's what you want from art. If you're a singer and you write a song, you want people to dance and sing and get emotional about it. It's no different with art. You want an emotional response, and all of a sudden here I had it, and it was really unexpected. And so it's kind of was the path of my professional career, was connecting with these people that I didn't know, that I didn't think I would. And it was so much more rewarding than just the mark making, than just the mixing of color, and just, the interesting composition. It was a story. It was a connection.
I will always love that painting. Was that one you wish you kept? No.
It is. It's one that my wife was like, "Don't sell it," and my ultimate response was, I need to put the best that I have here. I want this to succeed, and I'm not going to do it by painting cheap art. I want it to be art that people thank me for by by paying for it. They're not cheap. This artwork is not cheap, but my life's dedication is also not cheap. I have done this my whole life, and I put every bit of me into this, into these paintings, and so that's what I wanted. I wanted the reward for my hard work as a thank you, you know, and that piece was hard to let go. And he comes back every year. He's a really great client, one of the nicest guys. Comes back every year, and every year I tell him, if you ever want to sell it, contact me first. If you ever want to trade it, you can take your pick of any painting I have, big or small. I don't care which one it is. You pick it, and I'll give it to you. I don't care if it's the size of a house. I will give you any painting I have for that one. And he says, nah.
It was a pivotal moment. So thank you for sharing that. So I think we'll stay on that side. We'll just kind of go back and forth. Maybe. I don't know. I do it different every time. But you touched on it in your introduction. But you had a transition of where you came in the first year, and we let you come back because we liked you.
Oh, was that the reason?
Yeah. But what happened in your life that you felt compelled to tell these stories?
Fear and failure. Something we all sort of feel like we're alone at that period of time. Santiago pointed out something that his wife wanted to paint. This is a family affair. We're part of that. And we're trying to support our families by doing something. Emotional support is all we want. And a little of that. You can go further, but your wife is watching. You're dancing, don't you laugh? So, yeah, something about being an artist. We put it on our lines, but we're also trying to support our family. This is, we could be digging ditches and doing the same thing, but nothing gives us as much emotion as actually having somebody collect something. The fact that this guy won't give up your piece is just an unbelievable feeling, to think that you've created something with just your hands and your thoughts that somebody has become so emotional over, and they don't even know the true you inside of you. And that's something we all put on there, and especially these guys here. We're here telling stories. And like Susan was pointing out, is I hit the bottom, and I was lucky to get in. And I've been looking for my own voice. You can hear I'm very quiet and very shy. And but I didn't have a way of portraying that on the canvas. In fact, I used to paint tropical scenes, which went really well in the desert. And but that's all I knew. And I look back and I realized you'll laugh now, but the mortgage didn't get it. But yeah, I look back and I use the term, it was my marijuana of art. I overthink the shit out of everything, and that was my problem. So if I didn't paint, I probably would have had a couple of disastrous marriages, because it has to come out somewhere. And it was during this show that, in fact, a few of the guys in the show actually helped me. I remember these guys here came up and, it was very supportive. That is one good thing about this show. It's very creative. It's hard to sleep and there's a lot of coffee going around. And I found my own voice, and I started painting from a picture back in the day that I'd taken when I didn't even realize I was an artist. And I put a train track on a couch on the train track at my sister's, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. And I said it'd just be great photos, And it was being a spectacular photo for my own personal use. And then I reached to it for a self-portrait, actually in the same way that you painted yourself. I guess it's a really similar story. We put ourselves out there, and I just wanted to put myself out there, but I took myself out of it and used the couch. And at that point, I was realizing, well, the difference between the house and the home is you create that home. And the center of the home is usually the furnishings. We come back, we sit back, we relax. But you can get new furnishings, and it's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with you. It's inside of you. And that's when I realized, oh, this couch is me. It's my comforts and security, and I put it on the tracks, and that became the tracks of my life. And here I am, comfortable and secure, but you're always going to have choices. And again, I don't know how far deep you want me to get on this. Am I good? Have we got a date?
The therapist is charging by the minute.
I am the therapist. And so I started reaching into all the experiences that I've had and I've been lucky enough to put myself in a position where I've had a lot of experiences, and I started telling the stories, and from that I really felt naked putting myself on the canvas, and it does become emotional. It really is an emotional thing, and when I tell the stories, it's the connection, as we were just saying, the people connect because they feel they're alone at those special times where, heartbreak or something like that. But we've all gone through this. We all feel naked so many times with our emotions. I'm being able to capture it and put it on a piece. There has been, I know I've come to terms with who I am and what I look like. And it's very interesting to see myself cry and other people in my booth cry because they've related to this piece. And I've been very grateful that I've been able to constantly create through my fears and failures and putting it out there and having people rejoice thinking they were alone at that period of time. So.
I had one get away too. That has caused a lot of heartache in my life. But when I went bankrupt after investing everything I made in a recording studio, that was probably the hardest thing that I had to go through. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to feed my kids. And there were times when I had like $20 to my name for a weekend with my kids. I'm not kidding you. And I'd go to Trader Joe's and I'd get 3 pizzas for $3.99 each, and I had Netflix on my computer. We moved into an old grocery store that I turned into my studio, and there was a room in the back. We all slept together and watched Netflix, on the computer. And I would put my paintings outside. I just started painting, and I would put my paintings outside leaning against my car in front of the grocery store. And it was on a bike lane. And people would stop by and they'd say, "How much for that painting?" And I'd look and I'd go, "Well, how much do I need to make it through the weekend to feed my kids?" So I'd say, $250 or $200 if it's cash. They'd go run cash. I'd say, "Okay, boys, let's go to the beach. We're done for the day." So it was really out of survival, but looking back on it, really, I was always an artist. I've been an artist since the day I was born. I was dancing from 3 years old. My kids dance. I was tap dancing on a milk crate to Buddy Rich playing drums, and it's like it was always inside of me. And I think a lot of the art forms are all connected. I think of art as sort of the trinity: poetry, music, painting, dance. Everything's connected, and so I really was as performing, and then as a teenager, maybe wanting to work for Mad Magazine, and so I did little cartoons, which I really haven't evolved much from, actually. But then getting into other life experiences, you find that what makes you happiest, and sometimes you have to hit the bottom to find that out. I believe the struggle and living in life. I mean, we get to a point, painters, artists, that our work is how do I put it? God, I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, it's an expression of who we are, and sharing it with everyone is putting it out on the line for whether you like it or you don't like it. It's going to get a reaction or not, and it's really difficult to put yourself out on the line. But when you have to do it, when you're born to do it, you don't even think about it. You just keep moving forward. And I think that's really what it was for me. It was just the perseverance of continuing to go and to know that that's where I was happiest. I was happiest when I was by myself doing art. But now I'm around all these people, and I'm learning so many different things by what you do. I've been watching you like crazy, and he's amazing, and what Pete does and what she does. I'm watching what everybody's doing. This is my first year, by the way, and I'm learning, and I'm actually stealing all your ideas a little bit, just so you know. just taking little bits of everybody and, you know, putting it into the pot like a gumbo, stirring it up, and we'll see what happens next.
There was a saying. There's a saying of you should always lie, cheat, and steal. Lie in bed at night and dream of all the things you want. Wait a minute. cheat your family of a little bit of time and steal. I'm so bad. Ignore me.
The hearts of millions.
Anyone else know it? It's a good thing. It's not bad like cheat and steal. It's good like cheat and steal. Like dream.
We'll look it up.
Yeah. So take it away, Priscilla. Let's hear about what got you going and got you
So going back to
starting
my,
from biology.
yeah, so going back to my dad, who biggest gift I was given in life, besides the gift of life, obviously, was the fact that he recognized something about me that I, even at the time, was ignoring. And going back what these guys are saying, I don't think art is an expression of who we are, it is who we are, all the time. And I remember when I made that decision, the minute he said that, I knew he was right. I knew that art was my thing. I was always painting, like Santiago, there's photos of me as a 2-year-old, pencil and paper, forget anything else, not dolls, pencil and paper is what I wanted. So anyway, having said that, I told my dad, you know artists start, right? And he looked at me and he goes, you have a family that loves you, give me a call. And it became our joke for many years. I would call him and I would say, Dad, they starve. And he would say, do you need help? And I would say, hell no, I'm going to do this on my own. I was a single mom for 10 years. Going back to doing what you have to do, I worked 3 jobs. And at midnight, I would have to paint because I had to do that. It was who I was. And I would paint for 1 or 2 hours, drop her at school, do my 3 jobs, be with her in the evening, and paint. And all along, like these guys are doing, you know, just trying to make a go of it. And very few of us get to this point without really paying our dues and paying it art. But I think it's what makes us better artists, better understanding. And you know, all I can say is the best thing in my life. It is who I am, and I would not change a thing.
You are all awesome. I'm in awe. So let's switch now a little bit to talking about your work. And we're going to start with Priscilla. I'm going to get out of the way.
I can stand up, but I don't want to stand up because I'm
I'll
still
be
a little
your-
bit
I'll be
wobbly.
your Vanna.
Okay. So I've been painting for 43 years, and I'm actually known as far as gallery shows or museum tours for my figurative art underwater. I'm an artist that likes to. I like for you, the viewer, to get a feeling. And some pieces is emotional. This is one of my non-figurative pieces. I used to do this a while back, and I brought it back. And so I want the viewer to come and see what they see, you know, what they recognize. In this case, the obvious is monochromatic, is black and white. Right there, you're getting a certain sense. You get the 2 pillows. One obviously has been slept in and very, you know, the sheets are rumpled. The other one has been lightly slept in or a long time ago. And take the second look is the feather. And then your mind hopefully starts saying, what's going on? What's the story? And some of us, I'm one of them, I cannot speak for other artists. The title is important because that's my little nudge to you as to what the story might be. So speak out, except Pete. You know, when you see this, if I was to tell you this is called Pillow Talk, what's your first impression? Anybody? Jump out. If it's Pillow Talk. I'm sorry? If it's Pillow Talk, or by yourself, or you're talking to someone or someone, you know. So the title, Pillow Talk, to me, it's a little bit neutral. What if I tell you that the actual title of this is Missing You? Okay? And then all of a sudden, And all of a sudden, that title tells you that the rumpled pillow makes a lot of sense. That the sheets that you can tell half of that bed has been slept on, the other half has not for a while. And why the crow's feather? So crow's feather has a lot of meanings, has a lot of symbolism. Sadly, it's become seen almost as a negative thing. And for many years, way before our time, anybody here, a crow's feather was a sign of strength. A crow's feather meant that you needed to let something go that was holding you back. And a crow's feather also meant that someone is with you spiritually as you are working an emotional upheaval in your life. So that's the meaning of a crow's feather. So what's really interesting about this painting, I did it for the show, and I've had 5 people that responded. And one of my favorite things is I quietly sit down, paint, and I hear what people have to say. 3 women came up and said, I love this piece, but I'm so sad. That was the reaction. A guy came in and said, oh my God, this piece speaks to me, and I don't know why. And I'm listening to this. And about a week later, this woman comes in and goes, I love this piece. It's so romantic. And so I try through my paintings. It's more about, this one is more emotional than my other paintings are more about feelings. But I do love when I hear you, the viewer, interpret what this means, because this painting, as the weeks have gone by, I've heard, I kid you not, 20 different personal meanings. And that's when I know as an artist I've done my job, is when I get a reaction, good or bad, from you, the viewer.
Don't know if I'm strong enough to
I think I can move on. I can move on. Okay, let me get on this side, actually. All right, I'm a self-taught artist. First, I have no idea what I'm doing. Just so you know that. Actually, the Bill trailer painting was so kind of important to me, but what was so important to me was the simplicity of the drawing, and how sometimes, to me, the best things that I see are what kids do. Kindergarten, first grade. After that, when they learn to color between the lines, they lose me. But not everybody, you know. In this particular piece, I'm using old ephemera. Nothing is photocopied. Stuff from books, the cardboard box from the Almond Joy, the metal tin, the Department of Redundancies department. Does anybody know where that came from? Anybody? Ever see the movie Brazil with Robert De Niro? It's a Terry Gilliam movie. Anyway, the Flintstone, the puzzle. So these pieces, the texture comes from actually the ingredients. And the color also comes from the ingredients without painting necessarily. There's a little wash over this thing, but it's the way it's put together sort of as color, and then the oil stick drawing on top, which is with one of my favorite artists of all time, Jean-Michel Basquiat used to use. I want to transport you into my world, take you back to something nostalgic, because that's when life was good. We rushed to try to get out of the house because we want to get away from our parents. But that's an illogical thing to do. We had a lot of fun in the house. You know, you get to play. Now we got to do our own wash, we got to pay our own bills. This is when times were simpler and happier. All this stuff is old. This Playlands from San Francisco was an amusement park that closed in the early 70s. Ballroom dancing book from Fred Astaire. teaching people how to do the steps. Somebody might remember some of that. The sheet music, when I pick a piece of sheet music out of a box, I just randomly pick it out. And the title has no meaning to me at the moment. 3 months after I paint this painting, this thing tells me a story. It's like this little guy is going on an adventure. He started out on canvas, he worked his way to collage, now he's on found objects, more like wood and rusted metal and all that. And it's almost like he's taking me on a journey. My life is unfolding, and he's leading me along the way. I try to shed him, but he's very difficult. And so it's so hard for you, but to take a close look, you can look at every one of these things and you might connect with it. I hear a lot of people that come into my booth and say, oh my God, I had a Mr. Potato Head. Well, this is the box for Mr. Potato Head when you actually had to use a real potato, not the plastic crap that they sell. A wheel that you can interact with where you spin, somebody can come up and play with it. I want people to touch it. I want to kind of almost feel like they're there. Not almost feel. I want them to feel like they're there, that I take them back to this place. This is when a simpler time.
I challenge anyone to go stand in front of Tim's booth and not smile. I mean, there's so much to see there, and I love that you allow us to play with art, because not every artist wants you to come up and play with their stuff, but their art. But you have such a sense of joy, and it comes through the way you magically collage the pieces together. And so definitely, if you need a smile, you go see Tim and awaken that child within you, for sure. Thanks. All right, let's hear about your piece, Mr. Tadak.
Okay, well, I told you I overthink, so be prepared. The evolution of man and the evolution of yourself. You can see pretty much this happening in every Walmart around the US. But what this one discusses... Was that too fast?
Yeah. Sometimes we have to translate for you. Walmart.
Walmart. So, I just happened to be listening the other day to, they just found a new structure of DNA, a ghost structure, that has now changed where they believe man came from. And I tell you that because I was inspired by Carl Jung's writing, who was a philosopher that talked about the 3 levels of consciousness. He inspired an artist whose music I love, a song that I actually really had to look into to research where it was going from. What he discussed was back in the day, there used to be a species of human that had 44 chromosomes. We grew to be 46, which is what we are now, our body, our spirits, our mind. They say the next level is 48, which would be 2 more chromosomes. They say it's a connection outside of our body, which is funny because Elon Musk is also talking about a cell inside of us, which could be those. But what's holding us back is our fears. And this is where it comes back to our own self, because our fear holds us back from doing so many things. From these songs and from that writings, I was inspired to do this piece because I think about the pool as life. We're all in it. Only some people choose to kick their feet around on the side while others jump all the way in. If you're willing to jump all the way in, you know there's going to be a lot of failure, like every story we've just heard from each one of us here. Now, as I say, our fears, as you can see here, she's got a black cape coming down off her. It's actually not coming down, it's actually coming up and holding her down. We're all born with wings, only some of us learn to fly. It's our fears that stop us, because if you can tell, she's in a glass container because we're all confined by something, whether it be emotional, psychological, physical, or financial. You've got to figure out what that is. It doesn't mean you can stop it, but understanding what's stopping you from doing certain things will allow you to come in complete contact with your inner power, your strength, and that's the representation of the tiger. Now, as I say, she's failed. She's at the bottom. This is where you're going to be viewing things with a lot more clarity when you're able to see from the bottom. But you've got to jump in. You've got to have the balls to go for things. And that's the problem with a lot of people, because education, they say, is one of the greatest gifts, right? The octopus down here is one of the most intelligent animals around, but it's near the bottom of the food chain. So if you don't go, you'll never know. And we've listened here, you know, some people have been painting all their lives. Others have just sort of picked up a brush. You know, I was one of those. I never had any formal education. But I think passion beats the shit out of everything. if you're passionate about something, you can achieve whatever it is that you want to do.
And we can't pick that up to show it around, but it is pretty intriguing that she is inside a glass box underwater. So you don't see that at first, but when you come up closer and take another look, that part of the story reveals itself. And so she's in a glass box at the bottom of, I want to go in that pool.
Well, if you're at the bottom, you're failing. But don't be scared of failure. You know, we're not supposed to get there. We all have. That's a good thing. You know, and we're taught that success is such a great thing, but I don't know too many people who've been successful. We get to meet a lot of people here who are successful in so many things, and it doesn't come without struggles or failure. And this is what we're talking about. People connect with this. And when we're putting our stories out there, we feel alone like a heartbreak, and we all connect to that sort of a thing. It's human nature. And that's what as I say, we get emotional, all right? I personally get quite emotional because I have to dive deep and become naked, not physically naked, but be naked to put my emotions on the canvas and have it be accepted by other people. There's no greater gift than somebody purchasing my work for their home and seeing that they have a connection for that reason as well.
Everything we want is outside the comfort zone, right?
That's all right, because comfort kills people's dreams.
Well done, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So you've got some stories and some symbolism and secret letters, numbers.
So, it's a Volkswagen, and imagery-wise, it's pretty simple. But what I like to express my work as is a couple of things. So, in the simplest form would be a memory. You know, I have memories of what a car like this means to me, and that's great for me. That's not necessarily what I want the viewer to see. I want the viewer to see their memory. And this is an extremely iconic image that we all know what it is. You don't have to know anything about cars to know what this is, you know. And that's fine if it doesn't necessarily strike a memory per se with you. But that's why I do paint a lot of the objects that I do, is because one of them is going to. And the point is this emotion that I talked about before, the memory that it brings up takes you into something that's more than just paint or a two-dimensional object. And I like to say that I'm painting 3 different kinds of history or 3 different kinds of time. There's the effect or the time that something like this, whether it's a train or an airplane or a Volkswagen, what it did to all of us collectively. You know, the automobile, for example, how that changed the world, the effect it had on how we function day to day, work, you know, travel, all that kind of stuff. That's very interesting to me, the evolution of that. You know, for example, these cars are ridiculously expensive now. Whereas at one point in time, they were kind of the throwaway car. They're the car you got when you didn't have any money. A car like this one, for example, and I know because I used to restore them, in this condition would be $60,000 or $70,000 just out of the gates, and the wheels would probably fall off. And so that's interesting to me. Then there's the time for this particular vehicle. It was purchased brand new at some point. Somebody drove it, then they sold it, maybe got, you know, fender bender. It got left out in the rain, it got left out in the snow, it drove through Utah, got all the salt inside it, rusted some more, maybe somebody restored it, then they put it in their backyard, the kid drove it, it got, you know, dinged again, the engine died. It has its own story. That's the story that's more visible here, where you see dings and dents and paints chipping and rock chips and the rust that kind of comes through here. It has its own story, this particular vehicle. I stood in front of it and took a picture of it, and I every time would think, if I could just see through the eyes of this vehicle, what story would it tell? And then there's the third kind of history or time, which is our very own, mine, yours, everybody's individually. My wife, for example, she remembers vividly sitting in the back of her dad's orange Volkswagen and looking up at the perforated vinyl ceiling, which was the one with all the little dots. And she would sneak. He was a professor, and so she would sneak the pen out of his suitcase, which made him very angry. And then she would play Connect the Dots, which also made him angry. But she would do it really quiet. I think maybe it didn't make him angry. He was just kind of playing along so that she could be sneaky because she thought she was like 4. And so she remembers the smell, she remembers the light coming in through the door, how the engine sounded, the bumps in the road. It's very visceral for her. She remembers that. And when I painted one of these for the first time, she forgot that story. And she's like, oh my gosh, I just remembered this. And that's kind of what it's for. It's our own, that's not something I intended to paint. I'm not painting this thinking, oh, I can read your mind. I love that it tells your story without me having any clue what your story might be, or if we've never met. And so it's those 3 things that I think about all the time as I create and I paint. Is the story of us collectively, the story of the actual object, because it's interesting enough for me to want to paint it and for people to enjoy. And then there's our individual story, which is ultimately what my work is about and what I'm trying to portray. I do that through composition and color and brush making and a lifetime worth of study into the creation of art, but it takes a backseat to the shifting of the weight, to touching your face and leaning over and telling somebody the story. And I've heard thousands of stories. Some are hilarious, some are sad, some are really cute, some are endearing. I heard them all, and I love that I'm painting and a stranger will come up to me and say, oh my gosh, hey, and there it is, and so that's what it is.
And you don't just paint Volkswagens, you do lots of things that travel. Hot air balloons, trains,
Yeah,
boats.
So this was my story, and that was part of it. So the first year that I came here, in a gallery, you sell an art piece, and maybe the gallery tells you, sometimes you just get a check, and you're like, woo! But I don't know where that piece went. I don't know the people. I don't know the house. It was at this show that I realized this connection was so important to me. Not just because I want to know where my paintings go and I want to see how it makes people happy, but it was one person's reaction to the work, 10 people's reaction to the work, 1,000 people's reaction. Only one person's going to take this piece home. Just one person. But the reaction was valuable from everybody who gets to look at it, because I didn't paint it for that one person, I painted it for everybody. And so to see that reaction over and over and over again was incredibly valuable. I did not realize that would happen. And so what I wanted to do was paint everybody's story. This was my story. This was my life. I was just painting what I did. But there's trains that are stories, and there's airplanes that are stories, and there's boats, and there's hot air balloons, and there's old cars, and there's shiny cars, and there's beat up cars, and horses, and everybody has a story, and I wanted to paint everybody's story, even if I didn't know it.
And I love you have such range, like each of you, we can find small, beautiful pieces up to gigantic pieces from each of you. I mean, none of you are afraid of size, and you also have the little bitties for some of us. But let's paint that plane. take off and land, and the windows rattle. And I used to always run out because I don't care how many times you see them, they're cool to see. And then they built the building next to me, so I lost my vantage point. But anyway, that was brilliantly planned, Santiago. Good job. The transportation, planes, trains, and automobiles. So what I'd love to do now is see if there's any questions for our guests. Yes, please.
Does the number plate mean something?
The number plate.
So 328 is significant for me. All my paintings have it. And sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not so obvious. And I don't really like to point it out. If you don't see it, you have to find it. But it can be very sneaky. For example, one time I put it in Braille in my painting. Just in a corner, it looked like rust maybe, but if you know what you're looking for, there it was. So it's a number I've seen my entire life. Ever since I was 6 or 7, I would wake up in the middle of the night, look at the time, and it was 328. I'd go to the store, pay in cash, get the money back, and it was $3.28. I'd be watching a soccer game, and there'd be a substitution, and one number's 3, the other one's 28, and walking onto the field together. Everywhere I see it. And so I was painting one of my very first buses, and a buddy of mine came over, and I was painting the license plate at the time, and I was just painting it as I saw it, whatever the number was. I was just rendering it, copy. And he came over, he's like, "Oh, I love this painting, it's so cool. You should change that to honk if you love hippies," or something stupid like that. And I was like, "Thank you for coming by," and just kind of dismissed it as, this is real art. I'm not gonna paint that. And so he left, and then I sat there holding my brush, and I thought, why shouldn't I personalize it? It'd be fun to personalize it, but I didn't want it to be like this big thing. I just wanted it to be kind of subtle, and so it was instant for me. I erased the numbers and I put 328. And as soon as I did it, it was like a signature. And I thought, sweet, and it made perfect sense to me. And it was true to what it was. It's just a license plate, right? But for me, it was very significant. And so then I did it in the next one, and the next one was a train, and they have numbers. And the next one has a boat, and they have numbers. And then I came to one that didn't have any numbers. For whatever reason, I don't remember what it was. And I thought, what should I do here? And so then I started to hide it. One time I turned the brush around and I scraped it into the paint. I had some thick chunky paint and I scraped it into the paint with the butt of the brush. And it was just in the cement. And so it's all just gray. And if you look at it in certain light, all of a sudden you see 328. Anyway, it's just kind of become my second signature and a lucky number or something. And for those that are in the know, they see it. And sometimes someone will see a complete body of work and they'll see 328, 328, 328. And they'll ask me about it, but for most people, they just buy it and they don't even know.
And now you can all go play Seek and Find over at Santiago Studio. Okay, great question. Anyone else? Yes, please.
So we're all part of Priscilla Johnson fan club.
Priscilla Johnson fan club is here. Woohoo!
At DC Ranch, so we're residents. So they're all great. I want to ask you questions about those, but just in general, this is such a great venue. Is the future safe here? Because we're seeing all this, we're all for capitalism and stuff, but we have to control the development.
Wow.
What can you tell us? Is there anything we need to do?
I guess that one's for me. This wonderful patron here who loves the show and this event just asked if we're safe, if we're going to stick around. And the answer to that is, we will. We're not going to leave Scottsdale, but we may not always be right here. But we are a deeply rooted and deeply connected part of the community. And we have great community support. And when the time comes to move, we'll do it. This is our 4th location since we started the show 30 years ago. Each time we move, there's some new exciting challenge. which also leads to new and exciting opportunities. So just earlier today, I said our next location, our next facility is going to have an auditorium, so we don't have to convert the cafe. Because this will continue to grow. But that is a very good question. There is a lot of building going on everywhere. Maricopa County is the largest, fastest growing county in the country. So we are staying ahead of it and have always got options on the horizon. But I will tell you, when the time comes that we are going to relocate, we will be looking for community support as we go through the use permit process in the future. But,
Can I step in here?
yeah.
Yeah, so actually our first year was our first year, the first year for this show here. So what you guys are all doing here is the building since we've been here. So moving is not an issue. You know, we're going to get the support. We've got a great advertisement and business behind us to build this and constantly follow us. So that's not an issue. We're not going to stop. Is anybody here stopping painting? A broken leg can't even stop a painting.
And sitting in the audience is somebody who is helpful, instrumental in helping us get this location, Ned O'Hearn. Yes. I will tell you, we have a dynamic relationship with the city, and we are well liked and well supported, and our commitment is to be here.
We'll tell them this land is contaminated.
Yeah, you can't dig in this dirt. So, but yeah, and obviously it's a large commitment for us because every time we move, we put a significant amount of infrastructure in, and but really every time we do, it gets better. And most, like, this is kind of a good subject too, because Pete talked about fear. A lot of people are afraid to change and fearful of it. Well, nobody will find us if we move, but you'll find us. We'll make sure of that. But hopefully it won't be an issue for a few more years. But
Something I need to
it is the
say.
most expensive dirt in Scottsdale right now.
Something I want to say from an artist perspective is that I'm not worried about anything like that because that woman is in charge and nobody cares about us artists more than Susan right there. And so whatever happens, if we move or if we don't move or if this or that, she's gonna take care of it. I'll just keep painting.
You keep painting and you all keep coming and collecting and sharing. Even though I said don't tell your friends about it, you can tell your friends. We'll get more chairs.